Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is my review of the Stribog SP45A3. So in my personal history, I've had the unfortunate circumstance of having to mess with UMP 45s. UMP and a 9mm as well, but I shot the UMP 45, which of the UMPs is the best one, but that's like being the smartest kid on the short bus. I bring that up because there's a lot of similarities between the Stribog SP45A3 and the UMP family. One being it takes the same mags. It comes with 20 rounders from Stribog, or they also have Global Ordnance 25s, or you can get the actual HK made UMP mags that will fit very, very well. And the guns, from an aesthetic standpoint, they're very similar in appearance, but that's kind of where the comparisons end. The SP45A3 uses a pin versus a detent in its roller delay, which some people think matters a whole bunch, and some people say it doesn't really matter much at all. I'm in that second category. But it is a 45 ACP chambered PCC/SMG. If you switch out for the select fire lower, if you're able to do that with a demo letter and go all through the hoops and nonsense you have to use. I wanted to check this out because I'd had such a bad experience with the UMP 45. I wanted to see if somebody could take a similar approach and actually do it successfully. And I've checked out Stribog products in the past. Not too long ago, as you guys know, I did the SP10, which is their 10mm version. I wanted to see if there was going to be a significant difference between the 10mm and the 45. Very similar operating systems, definitely a different caliber. Roller delay is there. Ergonomics are going to be the same. So I actually had an opportunity to talk to Stribog at SHOT Show, and they decided, like, hey, if you were going to check one out anyway, we'll just send you one. So for full disclosure, they did provide this for the review, but as you guys know, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a good review just because of that fact. So for the review, I went ahead and used a ScalarWorks mount with an Aimpoint C2, which is what the P2 should have been. A different conversation. Mod Light OKW with Unity Tactical button, and I use a Magpul RVG for my setup. This is a factory SBR, so no issues there. And during the review process, it came with 3 of their 20-round factory mags, and I also have some of the Global Ordnance 25, 28, 25-rounder magazines to use for the review purpose. As far as the functionality of the firearm, like I already mentioned, it is a roller delay firearm, so it uses a similar system to an MP5, so there's some similarities there. It doesn't share a lot of commonality with the UMP, other than, like I said, internally it's much more an MP5 than it is a UMP. Let's just go ahead and say that. As controls go, it does have an ambidextrous magazine release. It's got a button, which you don't have to use because it's got a paddle. And trust me, based on reach, because of the Stribog lowers, it's much easier to use that ambi paddle than it is to try to overextend or break your grip and roll. Some people, if you got longer fingers, you're going to be able to get away with it, but you still have to, because it's recessed, you have to apply a lot of pressure to use the button, so I recommend just using the paddle. I do have a non-ambi bolt release. I've got an ambi safety selector, and I'm good to go. The lower is all one polymer glass-filled nylon or glass-filled nylon piece, meaning I can't change out my grips, which I don't like, because I do not like Stribog's grip thickness. It's too slim for me. So for me personally, I'd like the ability to throw a different grip on there. If it was AR-centric for AR grips, which it easily can be, there are some aftermarket options for Stribog family, like Lingle, that offer different lowers. And because in this situation, the firearm is the upper, not the lower receiver, you can change out lower receivers on these if one is available without having to go through the whole background check, FFL 4473 nonsense process. I've got a monolithic upper receiver with M-LOK. I've got basically 3 slots on both sides. I've got Picatinny on the bottom, Picatinny on the top. And it does have an integrated kind of a pistol or CQB type sight. I've got a front sight post recessed into my 1913 up front, which I can then view through my pick at the back, which is something I didn't spend a whole lot of time doing. I got the rifle set up, configured the way that I wanted to configure it. I started loading mags and went to the range and identified the immediate first problem, which is the magazines that come with the Stribog. These 45 ACP 10-round magazines, they seem to require some breaking in. I had a lot of problems. Now for the review, I'm shooting mostly 230 grain, but I also shot a bunch of 185, and then some defensive loads, which we'll get to. And shooting 230 or 185 grain through these factory mags, the first 500 rounds, I had a lot of problems. These mags were just not, and I attribute it to the magazine because when I switched over to these Global Ordnance manufactured 25 round magazines, I didn't have any feeding problems. One of the particulars about the bigger caliber submachine guns or PCCs that you sometimes run into is if you look at like an MP5 mag or a Scorpion or pretty much any of your actual SMGs that have been then neutered into PCCs, they're stagger-fed mags, whereas with the Stribogs, when you get into the bigger calibers, they're not. So they feed just like pistol mags do. And I think that might be part of the issue. I think stagger feeding with a stagger-fed chamber from a stagger-fed magazine increases the reliability of a weapon like this. That's just my personal opinion, especially when it comes to select fire. But it is what it is. I switched over to the 25 rounders and I used those for the most review process, but I still occasionally throw one of these in to see what was going on. And eventually, these magazines started feeding pretty reliably. So I can't immediately say don't use these, but just be prepared for what appears to be some kind of break-in period, which is weird on a magazine. There is a definitive advantage to the roller delay in this shooting 45 ACP, and I say that comparing it to direct blowback PCCs chambered in 45. The roller delay definitely helps with that felt recoil, which is noticeable not only in shot time or split time shooting certain drills, but also your overall reticle behavior during recoil. Although it still is a 45 ACP, so if you think you're going to be able to shoot this thing as consistently fast and accurate as you do a 9mm even in direct blowback, the answer may be probably not. If I had a direct blowback 45 ACP to put head-to-head to this, say they made a Stribog version that was direct blowback, there would be a definitive difference between the two. I do have a couple 45 ACP PCCs, but not a Stribog to do a direct head-to-head on that. And I don't like doing comparisons anyway, but that would be something where I would make an exception. The only ergonomic issue I had during the review, again, is getting that safety selector. When I'm primed, low ready, high port, compressed high ready, whatever position I'm using, I've got to break my grip a little bit to easily manipulate that selector. If I could just get a thicker grip, I wouldn't have that problem. You may be different. It may be great for you, but the lack of an option is annoying. As far as the other controls go, I've got a non-reciprocating charging handle. I wish the handle was a little bit longer, but that depends on what accessories you're going to be mounting on your rail there. I got to be very careful not to pinch my finger because of where I mounted my light activation button. But being able to change it over, obviously you can do that. I didn't have to mess with this thing a whole lot because the gun was reliable enough. It was locking back on an empty magazine. So I just spent a lot of time using the bolt release and not manipulating the handle. So usually the only time I really messed with this charging handle is when the OEM mags gave me a malfunction or I was chambering the first magazine of my range trip. After that, it was all bolt lock reloads. As far as reloads go, using the center paddle is fantastic. Another good thing about a center paddle reload on guns that have it is I'm going to hit it, and if the mag doesn't come out, well, my hand's already right there, I can strip it. So that's kind of a technique I've gotten into with guns that have center paddles, like Scorpions and other Stribogs and guns like that, MP5s, things like that. As soon as I hit that paddle, I'm just going to hand strip the magazine, then drop it, or store it if that's what I'm doing, and then go ahead, perform my reload, slap my bolt release, go back to work. So absent the grip swell issues, and again, it's just the grip swell, the safety selector itself is fantastic. It's clean, it doesn't take a lot of force to overcome, but it takes enough force that it's not going to inadvertently easily be swept off by your gear. But that grip swell was the only issue that I had. You can, like I said, use the button release, but it takes a lot of force to get in there and get on that from that angle. This is just a bad ergonomic way to release magazines, especially as how far you got to go forward. And me, I got to roll my grip a little bit. So using the paddle, and the paddle is just, it's going to work every time. You can do just a thumb hold, but you'll notice the mag's not coming out. And that's why you do a strip and drop. And as long as you're running it that way, no problems there. So the first 1,000 rounds, all unsuppressed. And no issues, except for, like I said, magazine-related issues, and I can directly attribute that to the magazine because on the Global Ordnance UMP pattern mags, basically a UMP clone mag, no issues at all. I was only having issues on those OEM 20 rounders from Stribog. The next 1,000 rounds, I shot all suppressed. Why? Because I can, and I generally, when I can shoot suppressed, I prefer to shoot suppressed. So I threw a rugged obsidian suppressor on there. And again, same ammunition, 230 grains, already subsonic, so I don't have to get any special 45 caliber subsonic ammunition. I'm shooting 230 grain through it. And shooting a 1,000 rounds suppressed can be trying on a firearm, especially roller delayed versus direct blowback, although direct blowback, a whole bunch of stuff's coming back into the gun, or a little bit more. Gas management slightly different, I guess. That argument could be made based on how the gas has to operate the firearm or how the recoil mass has to operate the firearm. I think that's a nitpicky argument when it comes to these type of operating systems, but some people would disagree. What I will say is more nonsense comes back into the gun when you shoot it suppressed, so it gives you a harder go of reliability versus shooting unsuppressed. So I definitely would agree with that. So during that next 1,000 rounds, shooting it completely suppressed, boringly reliable. 185, 230 grain, and defensive loads as well, which we'll get to specifically. Boring reliability. And eventually, these 20-round factory mags started functioning really well, so I was able to use them too. One of the solutions I've seen someone throw out, and this is something you might want to consider, but I wouldn't, is you can use the 10mm mags in this gun. So you can buy their 10mm magazine and load it. You're going to get about 18 rounds in it versus 20. At least I did with mine. I was able to load 18 rounds of 45 ACP in a 10mm mag, which makes sense if you think about it, different diameters. And it fed fine, but I'd rather just buy the better mags or shoot these enough that they start to become reliable. That being said, because I had initial problems with the factory mags, I would defer to the higher capacity mag, even though it does add considerable length to the firearm as far as how far it sticks out of the gun. I just liked shooting this thing a lot, and I had a lot of good reliability with it, especially using the good magazines. And it's a little bit more challenging, and this is not only relevant to the review, but I think it's worth mentioning. It's a little bit more challenging to shoot 45 ACP with the same mentality that I'd shoot 9mm, because the recoil is different. And I liked that challenge. And I appreciated that I had a good recoil management system in the gun, having shot and owned direct blowback 45 ACP PCCs. This thing is just night and day as far as how consistent, how quickly, how efficiently I can return to sight picture with recoil, especially at distance, but also getting on the trigger really fast shooting bill drills or shooting Bear Solution standards or some of the drills that I normally shoot. This is just a faster acquiring gun in that caliber. And if you're going to shoot a lot of 45 and you want a PCC, this is a good way to go because it's roller delayed, suppresses well. You know, put 1,000 rounds through it suppressed, didn't have any issues. And honestly, my only overall complaint, coming back to it, mention it one more time, is the fact that I can't change out that grip for something a little bit thicker. Maybe, you know, I'll just wrap it in duct tape and grip tape and call it a day, or get some rubber bands for it or something like that. Now, defensive loads. If you're going to set this up as a home defense weapon, if that was something you wanted to think about, and I do this normally, I always do my zero and my zero confirmations on defensive loads because it's usually higher quality ammo. Zeroing at 25 yards doesn't matter a whole lot, but it's a factor. I also ran a bunch of different defensive loads through it to make sure it would feed reliably. Gold Dot and some other brands, both 230, 185 grain, and the reliability was there. Feeding wasn't an issue. Granted, I did all the testing from the UMP style Global Ordnance mags. I did not try defensive loads from the OEM mags, just because I just forgot to check that. But feeding was happening reliably, didn't have any issues there, and it cycled everything I put in it. Now, our final word is accuracy. Is the Stribog SP45A3 accurate? Well, here is a zero confirmation group, 5 rounds, 230 grain Gold Dot, fired at 25 yards, bag supported. I call that pretty accurate. Again, it's only 25 yards, but realistically, how much further are you going to shoot PCCs? If you're consistently shooting out to 50 or 100, unless you're really trying to challenge yourself, probably better to grab a rifle anyway. Accuracy's there, reliability's there, ergonomics are good, except for that one thing. And you can get easily reliable magazines. Now, is there a reason to go 45 ACP over 9 or 10 millimeter in your PCC? It's kind of a personal decision. I will say that this is what the UMP could have been, because I know a lot of people have made comparisons between this and the UMP, even though they are kind of different. They do look the same, so I guess that's a reason why it comes up a lot. For what you're getting, especially at the price point, I think this is a fantastic gun. And if you want something 45 ACP that is, depending on which ammo you put in it, is always going to be subsonic and suppresses really well, this is the way to go. My only complaint, already mentioned, grip, and the OEM mags have to be broken in, which makes me not want to use them. So I've got an option with the Global Ordnance mag, so no issues there. Other ergonomics are fantastic, and overall it's a very well-performing gun. So if you're interested in the Stribog SP45A3 and you're thinking about getting a PCC in 45, this is probably the one to get. Till next time, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, train accordingly.